Frank, thank you very much. Thank you all. I am a simple man. Life is not really very complicated. I came to Washington 51 years ago. Back then, the FBI spied on Russians. This time, they spied on us. There was and is a brazen plot to do two things: exonerate Hillary Clinton illegally, and if she lost, to frame Donald Trump. That plot continues to this very day. It takes a particular type of person to function in the swamp when you have a media, a mass media, a superstructure in the government that seeks to undo a duly elected president from his term in office. It takes people of extraordinary courage, vision, and fortitude to become engaged enough to seek truth where other people avoid it for the purpose of subverting the Constitution. Make no mistake about it. You are watching a coup d'etat with the complicity of the former administration, which lied its way through 8 years and then sought to thwart the will of the people by undoing this president. There are literally a handful of Americans who cared enough to stand up for the Constitution, because make no mistake about it, that's what this is about. Don't let anybody kid you. This isn't politics. This is an effort at sedition. Sedition in the truest sense of that word. You have people like the former FBI director who should be in an institution and not one of higher learning. There are people like the former director of the CIA, the former director of national intelligence, the former Secretary of Defense, who goes unnoticed in many of these discussions. There are lots of villains in this story, almost all of whom are lawyers. Almost all of whom are lawyers. There are a couple of heroes who aren't lawyers, but there's one who stands out above all else, who has put his name, his reputation, and his institution on the line to get at the truth. We would not know a third to a half of what we know now if it weren't for Tom Fitton and Judicial Watch. Tom Fitton is a great American. He has fought the good fight against incredible odds to get the truth out. He and his people are phenomenal. And I cannot tell you what an honor it is for me, a personal honor, to be here tonight to introduce him. He is a great American. The President of the United States should be thankful that Tom and Judicial Watch exist, and I know that the President is. Tom Fitton.
Well done. I'm just going to read the citation here. Just a quick the citation that goes along with this award is the Freedom Flame Award recognizes individuals who have exemplified the ideals of freedom, democracy, economic opportunity, and international strength to which the Center for Security Policy is committed. The award acknowledges the past contributions of its recipients while serving as a reminder that the goals for which they have worked so valiantly require the continuing, unflagging efforts of those who follow in their footsteps. Joe, thank you.
Boy, oh boy, what an introduction, huh? Thank you so much to Frank Gaffney and the Center for Security Policy for generously presenting me with this award. I don't do this work by myself. I do it with my colleagues at Judicial Watch. I get to talk about all the great work they do. And we wouldn't be able to do it, obviously, without our supporters, many of whom are here in this room. And, you know, I want to give a special shout out to Frank, who has suffered so much more personally and viciously than anything Judicial Watch has gone through, or any of us have gone through in these various fights. So kudos to Frank for standing strong as well. You know, and Joe and Victoria are my heroes. You know, sometimes I don't know what to say until I see what Joe says. How do I think about this? There's been this new development. How do we think about this? What does Victoria and Joe have to say about this? And it helps us solidify, as Joe has so ably done tonight, the crisis we're facing. You know, it's kind of a tough night for me because it's a year ago today I lost my mother. And my father died a few years before she did. But I don't say that to get a lot of sympathy. But isn't it a wonderful country? You know, my father was a supermarket manager. My mother had 10 children and then became a nurse. And I'm sure, I want you to take a few seconds and think about where you came from and where you are now. And we're here because we stand on the shoulders of our parents and grandparents who worked enslaved to get us here. And the least we can do is try to protect the country they gave us. Hear, hear. You know, and I know a lot of you are desperate to see Hillary Clinton go to jail. You know, I don't know if that's going to happen. It's unlikely it will happen. You know, but it's important, though, to know that we've won in many ways in terms of getting her held accountable to the extent possible, given our political system and the difficulties we have with pursuing justice against people in powerful places. You know, there's been rough justice. It's not been perfect justice, but there's rough justice. And certainly to the extent the American people were sitting as a grand jury on Election Day 2016, they indicted Hillary Clinton. And she's not President of the United States because of the misconduct that Judicial Watch caught her in with her email scandal. And when we first asked for her emails, I thought she wasn't going to run for president. Frankly, we've been asking for them since 2011. And it was only as a result of our Benghazi Freedom of Information Act lawsuits, our lawsuits about asking her about, tell us about all this, how was it that Bill was able to raise $50 million personally and for his foundation while you were Secretary of State from the Russians, the Saudis, the Qatarians, you name it. Was those Freedom of Information Act lawsuits that led to the exposure of the Clinton email scandal. And little did I know that that Clinton email scandal would so frighten the establishment that they would immediately start to figure out ways to get out of it. And the way they thought about it, the way they got out of it, or tried to get out of it, was by sicking the FBI and the Justice Department on Donald Trump. This Justice Department and the FBI, while it was supposed to be prosecuting and investigating Hillary Clinton, was actually working with her campaign to come up with fraudulent reasons to spy on, investigate, and target Donald Trump and his team. There's no scandal like that in American history. Not in the history of the FBI, not in the history of the Justice Department. Now, the Democrats and the left will talk about these ridiculous Trump scandals and the administration. You know, I'm sure there are some ethical problems no matter what administration you have. We know that at Judicial Watch. We've sued the Trump administration 50 plus times already for documents. But the scandal of our generation is what's going on with the targeting of President Trump. The hijacking of the FBI and the CIA and the Justice Department and the Defense Department and who knows what other agencies to try to drive him out of office. And currently this Justice Department, which in theory is supposed to be run constitutionally by the President of the United States, has set itself up as a fourth branch of government that thinks it can investigate and harass the President in a way that not only impacts his ability to govern here at home, but manage our nation's national security matters abroad. Why else would this Justice Department, who is running this Justice Department, that it would allow the Justice Department to embarrass and harass the President with this ridiculous indictment or plea agreement, Michael Cohen, as he's going to a summit in South America, in the middle of a crisis with Russia over its aggressive actions against the Ukraine. I mean, this is a Justice Department that isn't working for the people anymore. And it's all about getting Donald Trump. Now, everyone else will try to distract you for some other things in the meantime, but that's the crisis of our time, and Judicial Watch is in the forefront of trying to figure out what's going on there. Over 30 Freedom of Information Act lawsuits alone. And we have ideas for more aggressive action. We'll see if that's taken. But some of these lawsuits, for instance, led to the disclosure that this FBI met with Clinton's spy, Christopher Steele, 11 times in 2016. No, excuse me, 13 times. They only paid him cash 11 of those times. You had the CIA, in my view, harnessing agents to go and target the president's team abroad because they knew if they did it here, they'd be in violation of executive orders and laws governing targeting of domestic political organizations. It's a scandal beyond all measure. And unfortunately, this Justice Department has made its number one priority is protect King Mueller, who's running the special counsel operation. And Congress has tried to pry into it, successfully in part, mostly been given the proverbial hand to the face. And now that the Democrats are taking control of the House, it's going to be up to Judicial Watch, practically speaking, alone, to figure out what's been going on. And I know it's frustrating, but the Freedom of Information Act, the law that Judicial Watch uses, is one way to get our government back under control. We figured out what was going on in Benghazi. We figured out what was going on with the IRS scandal. We figured out what was going on with the Clinton email scandal. The FBI was using Judicial Watch Freedom of Information Act documents to question the Clinton people in their sham investigation. They were using our FOIA work to do the questioning. But this is a remarkable ability we have here in the United States because there's no other country in the world where little old Judicial Watch could go in and stand against the IRS, the State Department, the Justice Department, you name it, and be on equal footing. And not be in too much in the way of fear of having our families imprisoned or killed or even worse. Everyone says, what can you do? What can we do? What can you do? Well, you know what we can do? I don't want to use, I would like to use a bromide here. All you can do is what you can do. And you would think that's pretty easy, but it isn't. Ask yourself, has Congress done everything it can do? Has our executive branch, has our foreign intelligence establishment, agencies, our law enforcement agencies at the federal level, have they done what they can do? Have the political leadership of both parties done what they can do? Has the media done what they can do? Of course not. But I'll tell you this, Judicial Watch does what it can do. And I'm asking you to do what you can do. And don't let it be that someone else has to do the work. You've got to do what you can do within your capacities. And if you take that attitude, you'll find that things are a lot easier to take. You recognize the crisis and you're doing what you can do. And by doing that, you'll be doing 50, 75, 100% more than the folks you pay to do the work that you think ought to be done. So with that, I really appreciate this generous award. I know I've gone on a little bit longer than anticipated, But what an honor, and on behalf of all of my colleagues at Judicial Watch, thank you for your moral and generous support. Thank you very much.